By the late 15th century, the Italian peninsula held a near monopoly on European wealth and culture. It was the epicenter of global banking, art, and Mediterranean trade. But the architects of this golden age had unknowingly built a landscape that was as fragile as it was rich. There was no single nation of Italy. Instead, the land was a mosaic of fiercely independent city-states like Florence, Venice, Milan, and Naples. They spent decades locked in a precarious balancing act, constantly scheming against their neighbors to secure slight regional advantages. To fight these localized rivalries, the ruling lords didn't raise national armies from their own citizens. Instead, they outsourced their defense to condottieri, freelance mercenary captains who operated private military companies and often prioritized profit over victory. This privatized defense left Italy wealthy but politically hollow. While the peninsula remained fractured, the neighboring powers of France and the Holy Roman Empire had evolved into massive, unified landmasses, with the resources to sustain a level of warfare the city-states couldn't imagine. In 1494, a local power struggle pushed this fragile system over the edge. Ludovico Sforza, the ruler of Milan, found himself cornered by the rival kingdom of Naples. Sforza made a decision that would eventually cost him his throne. He formally invited the King of France to cross the Alps and press a dynastic claim on Naples, hoping a massive French presence would intimidate his local Italian rivals into submission. He invited King Charles VIII. But Charles didn't want to play the role of a regional bodyguard. He looked at the divided peninsula and saw a territory that was both incredibly wealthy and entirely ripe for conquest. Sforza thought he was executing a clever maneuver to win a border dispute. Instead, he handed the largest military force in Europe a personal invitation to march right in, exposing the entire peninsula to an invasion it was never designed to stop. Charles brought 25,000 men across the Alps, but the real terror was his highly mobile siege train. He deployed lightweight bronze cannons on wheeled carriages, specifically engineered to fire heavy, solid iron balls. For centuries, thick stone walls allowed defenders to wait out sieges for months. The French guns changed the math, reducing those exact same castles to rubble in a matter of hours. The local condottieri were utterly outclassed. Their traditional, cautious tactics, designed for small-scale skirmishes, were swept aside by the scale and firepower of a professional national army. The French army marched from the Alps to Naples almost unchallenged. This conquest served as a signal to every other monarch on the continent. The wealth of Italy was now a prize for whoever had the most guns. Spain, the Holy Roman Empire, and eventually England poured their own armies into the peninsula. They were desperate to claim their own slice of the territory and block French expansion, turning Italy into the primary theater for European conflict. What followed was 65 years of unrelenting violence, known as the Habsburg-Valois Wars. Alliances dissolved as quickly as they formed. Popes, dukes, and emperors betrayed one another with dizzying speed, trading loyalty for temporary survival. The violence was sustained by a bitter personal rivalry between the era's major monarchs. King Francis I of France made it his lifelong obsession to dominate the peninsula, feeding French wealth and manpower into decades of continued struggle. These powers went to extreme lengths to secure an advantage. In a move that shocked the Christian world, France forged a military alliance with the Ottoman Empire, bringing Islamic fleets to participate in a European struggle for power. The conflict had mutated from a regional Italian dispute into a continental struggle for hegemony. While the kings fought for dominance, Italy bore the entire cost of the war, in lost trade, destroyed cities, and occupation. These 60 years of high-stakes combat forced a rapid evolution in how humans fight. Italy became the laboratory where the medieval code of warfare was systematically dismantled. The heavily armored knight, the elite warrior of the Middle Ages, was replaced by the massed infantry square. Armored cavalry were repeatedly slaughtered by dense walls of Swiss and German pikemen holding 18-foot spears. Then came the introduction of massed firearms. At battles like Cerignola and Pavia, Spanish forces used thousands of arquebusiers to fire coordinated volleys, proving that gunpowder had become the deciding factor on the open field. Architectural design adapted to survive the new artillery. Engineers developed the Trace Italienne, massive geometric fortresses with low-slung, angled earthworks designed specifically to absorb and deflect cannon fire. By the mid-1500s, warfare had transitioned away from individual chivalry toward a system of scientific engineering, mass-produced weaponry, and professional military organization. 60 years of continuous looting and violence hollowed out the peninsula. The devastation peaked during the 1527 sack of Rome, where armies spent months pillaging the city and living among the debris of classical civilization. The fighting only stopped when the major powers ran out of money. Bankrupted by the cost of their new professional armies, the exhausted treasuries of Europe finally forced the signing of the Treaty of Cateau-Cambrésis in 1559. The geopolitical outcome was clear. France was largely repelled, while Habsburg Spain gained absolute control over half of the peninsula, including Naples, Sicily, and Milan. Italy was no longer a collection of independent powers, but a series of subservient territories. The wealth that once fueled the Renaissance was diverted to pay for foreign occupation. The independent city-states that had sponsored masters like Leonardo and Michelangelo had lost the political autonomy required to sustain their cultural momentum. These wars proved that survival now required a massive state capable of funding a professional army. The centralized bureaucracies and professionalized militaries developed during this struggle became the structural template for the modern European state system.